Hey guys, I want to talk about Bitcoin and cash. How Bitcoin is losing the value to cash, and how people who think Bitcoin is valuable actually looking at this wrong. It's actually cash that is becoming less valuable. And perhaps the best way around this, okay, again, nothing I give you is financial advice. Just do your own research. But just know that the only thing I advise you to is what are our rings. So who am I? I'm the CEO of Oruka. Oruka is a smart payment ring where we allow you tap to pay. So already I can tell you any fintech app today has replaced cash. Okay. Because again, I have a whole video about this in terms of why cash is no longer king. Because well, number one, it loses value, it's not secure. You can't take it from this state to the other. If you walk around with $1,000, $2,000 worth of cash, you know what you're going to face already. You know, you're worried, you're concerned. Can't walk around the streets with that anymore. But you can walk around with 2,000, 3,000 on your ring, 2,000, 3,000 on your app, and you get away with it. Yeah, so our rings allow users tap to pay. There's no battery on this thing. So you can pay with your phone or you can pay with this. You know yourself, your phone is going to die in the next few minutes. Mine is already going low and warning me. But your this ring stays forever. Okay, there's no battery in these things. You can tap to pay wherever you are. And we currently work with banks, so about 650 banks. You connect when you order the ring, you download our app, and then that's it. You can put it on autopilot where automatically tops up your ring wherever you are. Low balance every week, you top it up, and then you go. You know, this was driven by one of my friends actually who got stabbed coming out with his phone. We had his phone to hand, just finished paying for the underground in London. I was coming out and then he got stabbed. So that got us nervous. You know, we thought about this and say, okay, we're going to come up with something. Already I had my app. It was a fintech app for savings, money save. And then I came up with this to say, okay, why don't we do something where you don't rely on this phone and these screens anymore and you can actually make payments. Okay. So we came up with this, which is just tap to pay wherever you are. If you're a business user, people ask me, why do you have two rings? So I have one for tapping to pay. Another is for a business ring. So this is a business ring where you can tap to receive money. If you owe me money, you could tap this and you pay me into my money, save into my bank account. Straightforward. And it's exciting again in terms of what we're doing. So it's cool. We're a very small company. So I'm delighted what we've achieved in the last 1 year. Join us, oruka.com. That being said, I want to talk about Bitcoin and how it's overtaking cash. And as a banker, I'm not happy with this. Okay. I don't know what cash can do. That's the point because we've gotten greedy. But I can tell you now that, I remember I remember walking into the office back in 2019 and I heard of Bitcoin. And one of my colleagues was a developer, came up and was like, hey, I'm mining these things. He had his laptop to hand. I think he had mined a few Bitcoin there. He mined about one or two, can't remember. I looked at it, um, and obviously everyone made fun of it. They laughed at it. And he was talking about this thing being money. Okay. And I looked at it going, if this becomes money, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. But there's something the banks can do to stop it. And they're doing it very well. Yeah, I can tell you. If there's anything happening, and I'll talk about the Bitcoin crash and how it goes up or down and why separately. Again, it's a long video on that one. But the point is, as it stands, currently it was crap. Okay. But right now I can tell you it's worth more than, in terms of value of Bitcoin, it's worth more than 90% of the GDP of most countries. It's huge, okay, in terms of the value. But here's the point, which I was going to talk about. Is it money? Okay. So let's compare it to what we call money. Okay. Because people argue and say Bitcoin is not money. The Bitcoin is it's just electronic dollar. I listen to Peter Schiff and a few other guys who are pro gold, which is funny enough. Gold is a piece of metal, okay, but we put value on it. The value we put on is what we can get from it, but in truth, we also use it daily. But we know as well that we make money from it because we think that the value of the product goes up. It's shiny. And we love shiny metals. Okay, silver is used more than gold, I can tell you, but silver is really, really cheap compared to gold. Platinum, steel is used a lot, but it doesn't mean it's got the price in terms of market value over gold. So in truth, let's forget that for a minute and go into Bitcoin. In terms of the value, cash has been again really, really, really printed at will. Okay, since 1973 or 1971, when it was decoupled from the dollar. The punishment we're now seeing with cash being devalued is that governments have just become and central banks have just become free with the money. And that's because you can write checks, right? So that's the point. If you got a credit card and you keep getting debts on a credit card, the bank will call you one day and go, hey, you're, you're owing too much on your credit card. Okay, you're owing so much on your credit card. What are you going to do? Take down the value of the credit card or pay back your debt. But the downside now becomes with governments, they just keep printing and printing and borrowing and borrowing. Yeah, at what cost, we don't know. And I know this happens and it's going to happen as well because I was in Ireland when I'm aging myself here. But I was in Ireland during the crisis when I think Greece had defaulted Before that, we defaulted. So Ireland defaulted, and we went to the EU to beg for more money. The EU said, "Hey, okay, let's vote for a program." I think it was called Troubled Asset NAMA, Troubled Asset Relief Program. And then we all went in and we created that program. That program was good, but here's the point: it meant that we couldn't spend, or Ireland couldn't spend much on the social changes that they wanted to do. In terms of public infrastructure and public spending, that body decided. So in fact, you have to pay the debt first before you do that. That's what's happening. Again, the US is still strong. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. Okay. But we need to understand that your debtors as a country can step in. That's one thing people need to realize. They're forgetting that when it comes to cash. I think that, and then a lot of economists as well just argue this point as well, which I think they're misleading people when they believe that the government is not a household. That's true. That if you're a household, you have to balance your books. You have to make sure what's coming in the same thing as what's going out eventually, or you get bankrupt. That's true. But they say countries can't get bankrupt. Okay. But here's what you're forgetting. Countries have debts, and if they refuse to pay those debts, they could be forced to pay. I'll see that happen in Greece. We know that. Like Greece, for those who don't know, Greece, I think about the early 2011 or 12, they fell into, financial crisis, and they had debts denominated in the euro. That they were owing money in a currency that they couldn't control. And then what happened then? The EU came in and actually stepped up, and they were hands up. There were a lot of memes around then, around the German chancellor then, Merkel, trying to force them to pay, and just refused to pay. But what happened then, believe it or not, was again, they were going to keep carrying on using the euro, they had to pay. So they had an Hellenic program, I think it's called, where they went in and actually took charge of the country, the expenditure, so that a portion of their debt was paid before it went to the social stuff that they had to pay for, politics and everything. So it can't happen. Again, the US, you guys are strong enough. The US can fight that, but how many countries can do that? Italy, Ireland, UK, how many countries can do that? Because believe it or not, you're not owing the man on the street. You're owing foreign governments. You're owing top, very, very rich people. So that's one thing to worry about. Like, we carry on. I was looking at the Brazilian lira the other day. Brazilian lira, from 1913 today, they've lost 95% of their value. So if you had money and you're sitting there, the last few years, you've lost 95% of the value of money that you're looking at every day. And then compare that to Bitcoin. Bitcoin technically is going up, but it's going up comparison to the dollar. It's going up because it's like having a cash, right? So you've got Bitcoin going up this way, but it's relative to the dollar. So when Bitcoin is going up, it's actually the dollar that's going down. It's inverse. So the dollar is going down while Bitcoin is going up. But in truth, Bitcoin has stayed the same way it was. We have a few arguments on this as well, and I'm part of that group, and I'd love to be part of any group that thinks about this as well, in terms of how to foster payments within the Bitcoin market, how to help Bitcoin as well as a currency. Because again, at the end of the day, we're looking at currency. Money was currency, but I've sat here now. You've sat here, you've watched this show for the last 9 minutes. In 9 minutes, you've lost money, which is supposed to be the reverse. When you sit and you do an activity, you're supposed to be earning money. Okay, you see what I mean? Like in truth, if you sit in an office, you're supposed to be earning money every hour you're in the office. Okay, but here's the point: you're earning money every hour you're in the office, but you're losing money because of inflation. So that when your employer is paying you, say 1,000 per day, inflation is eating it at 5%. Therefore, you're actually earning not 1,000 per day, 950 per day. So you've lost $50 on nothing, just inflation, on the value of the money going down. You see, man, that's crazy to think about, and that's a problem that we have. And that's only given because of the value, because you're paid in the dollar, you're getting return the dollar. I remember I was looking at this, and again, I'm a bit active on LinkedIn and on YouTube, obviously, and on TikTok. But one of the points people were mentioning was, South Africa. South Africa, very, very, are way ahead of the curve in terms of Bitcoin acceptance. So there are merchants that are actually accepting payments in Bitcoin, and they're spending Bitcoin. So that means they're in and out. There's a whole economy in Bitcoin that's being created. And here's what's funny: we can all go in there and use that as well. So it's not like you look at the rand and say, "Oh, okay, it's a South African rand. You're not sure what the conversion is." Right? No, no, no. You've got Bitcoin, which covers all countries, and then you can take it from A to B and you can convert it, which is different from cash. This is a bit of a ride, but I'm almost disappointed at the idea of how cash hasn't grown, hasn't kept up with how Bitcoin has moved. So again, we'll see how it goes. But as it stands, I think Bitcoin is way ahead of cash in terms of the value of the cash. Coin continues to be stable again in terms of the money, and I see it in the future is going to be a true currency. Question again, I repeat, a lot of people are going to ask. I'm sure a few people ask me to comment. So we shouldn't spend it, right? That's true. It's the same way you shouldn't spend your cash. Okay, so I'm going to answer that question as well. So I'll try and do it in this video in the next 1 minute. So here's the point: when you spend your dollar, okay, you spend your dollar, you replenish your dollar. If you're in the UK, pound sterling, you spend your pound sterling, you earn your pound sterling and you replenish it. If you don't replenish your pound sterling, you're in deficit. You're owing money. That's the same thing with Bitcoin. If you spend your Bitcoin, you have to replenish it. You have to go out and work to earn the Bitcoin back. And if you don't, then you've lost money. And that's where you say that, oh, you've lost money because there's this guy, Alejandro, I think I forgot it. It was Alejandro, yes. And I think he was based in Mexico then. 10,000 Bitcoins for pizza. Okay. And everyone laughed and said, oh, look, you just lost, I think he paid at this point about 1 billion for the pizza. That's true. But the same thing as paying for Rolex several years ago. Okay. The value has gone up. But has the value really gone up or has the dollar gone down? The dollar's gone down, not the value gone up. So in fact, the dollar's gone up, but that's only because it's worthless. So what he should have done is if he bought pizza for $10,000 or 10,000 Bitcoin, he should have gone to buy 10,000 Bitcoins and hold on to 10,000 Bitcoins. And I hope he did. In fact, he's famous now, so I think he did that, right? And that's what you want to do. You want to spend your Bitcoin and get it back. The price at which you get it back is a different conversation because what you're doing is if you buy Bitcoin and then you pay Bitcoin, you should get paid in Bitcoin. Okay, and there's a whole economy for this. Check out, I think it's Bitcoin Village or something like that. There's a lot of just search Bitcoin Village and you see that people get paid in Bitcoin and spend Bitcoin. If you do that, you're within the economy. What you don't want to do is go from fiat to Bitcoin and Bitcoin to fiat. And that's where people get confused, right? And if you do that, then you start to lose money because, at what point do you get paid in Bitcoin? At what point do you then transfer money? And then the merchant, at what point do they move back to fiat? It's another question that you're going to ask me. Okay, but you can pay cash to your taxes, but you can't do that. That's true. But the same thing as me coming to you to pay with my Rolex. I can pay you with my Rolex. Rolex actually is accepted as payment in most places. If I get lost or stranded in Argentina somewhere, I can pay with my Rolex and it moves across. So what do you do in that case? Well, you take the Bitcoin, you move it across, and then you convert it to cash at the exchange rate, and you pay your taxes. It's a good tip there. Not an advice, but follow through. I take care, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.